priest, a researcher, and a revitalist for the church. And it's a pleasure to be here with you to welcome you to this course. So we're going to begin this evening with our land acknowledgement and an opening prayer. So we are a single human race, yet we have many different cultures. And this diversity has often been formed and shaped as a result of the land upon which our societies have developed, the land which has fed our stomachs and our spirits. The territories on which we stand today shaped Indigenous cultures for millennia, creating language, song, and knowledge. And the significance of this land continues to flow through the veins of those Indigenous communities that continue to call this land home. We are gathered from coast to almost but not quite other coast, and maybe not quite the other coast, but you know. And so I'd like to invite you to remember and acknowledge the specific peoples and lands where you are by entering them into the chat. I acknowledge that original peoples have lived where I am standing for thousands of years. They called this place Mokinstis and Kutsisa. These are names that I doubtless pronounce incorrectly. And that's proper because these are not my languages. It is the land of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, and the Tsuut'ina nations. It's also the land of the Stoney Nakoda Nation and Métis Region 3. Settlers, Métis, and First Nations alike, we here on this land are the people of Treaty 7. Less than a kilometer from where I'm standing is the confluence of two rivers. It's the place where the Blackfoot believed that the world was created. And my English countrymen put their fort right there on that sacred ground and called it Calgary. I acknowledge that my standing here, not 1 kilometer away from that sacred ground and from that fort, is a participation in the ongoing processes of settler colonialism. Recognizing the land connects our gathering to our collective commitment to make the promise and the challenge of truth and reconciliation real in our communities. For when we acknowledge the land, we acknowledge the people. We recognize that acknowledging the diversity of our worldviews is key to the work of reconciliation. We understand that the land we occupy is profoundly connected to the Indigenous people across Turtle Island, not as possessors or as owners, but as stewards and legacy leaders. So my friends, acknowledging the land, let us pray. Loving and holy God, we thank you for the gift of calling us together to be people on a little journey together. Thank you for speaking into all of our lives, and through this time that we have together, thank you for being present with us and speaking into our lives together. May we have ears to hear and hearts to listen to your wisdom on these lands on which our feet lie. May we be faithful to your calling, and may we find the way to be leaders for the church in service of the world that you so love. We pray this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. So friends, a couple of quick notes before we start. As I mentioned, the sessions will be recorded. I'm curious, does anybody here, you could just show me by waving your hand at the camera, does anybody here have any familiarity with adaptive leadership from Ron Heifetz? So Leadership on the Line, the practice of adaptive leadership? No, this is completely and utterly fine. Some groups, there are people who know some things about that, so then it's just a little bit different, but don't worry if you never have heard about it, that works just fine. So there is a guy who works out of Harvard. His name is Ron Heifetz, and his book with Marty Linsky called Leadership on the Line is like the companion book to this course. So you'll hear me refer to Ron Heifetz, and you'll hear me refer to this book quite a bit. And the participant workbook is kind of annotated. If you want to read more about things, then you can read specific chapters or sections in this book, or just go ahead and read it all together. And normally it's really easy to get. Last year, people were having difficulty getting it, but it should be pretty easy to get. It's been around for quite a while, so it should be available at your local library if failing everything else. So a little bit about me before we start. After my first year at seminary in the early aughts, I had a summer job of doing a traveling vacation Bible school program around the rural communities in the Diocese of Calgary, which is like Red Deer, south to the border, the whole lower part of Alberta. So me and my team partner, we spent a week in each of 8 rural communities. We were billeted with local families. We were eating in people's homes. We were meeting all these good, well-intentioned, faithful people who were doing their very best to do church in these tiny congregations, often without any clergy support. And they were finding themselves faced with these huge challenges that they didn't feel any agency over. And their stories over the dinner table were just laced with stories of leadership from both laity and clergy where power was handled badly. And so after that summer, I discovered Ron Heifetz, the granddaddy of adaptive leadership. And it's from that foundation that my vocational calling has all come. So from the past 15 years, I have been using adaptive leadership as a tool to lead change in parishes and systems in the culture of my local diocese. And eventually I realized that this work goes far beyond these little churches, my own little diocese, or even my own little denomination, because when I speak to colleagues in other denominations, I've been speaking to United Church clergy from coast to coast to coast teaching this course, and colleagues in the United States, colleagues from other denominations, even colleagues in the evangelical church. What's becomes apparent is that the adaptive challenges that we face are all remarkably similar. And for folks who have taken the Curiosity Cohort, has anybody here taken the Curiosity Cohort? Nope, that's also completely and utterly fine. Just checking. So I believe that encouraging curiosity is one of the adaptive challenges that we face. So if you'd have taken that course, that would have all made more sense to you. So now I'm doing my PhD in leadership in the church, adaptive leadership, and how we teach adaptive leadership and use adaptive leadership in the church. And so I'm glad to be here today with you, my brothers and sisters, to see if we can't figure out how to apply this style of leadership together for the building up of the body of Christ, which is really what we're all called to. Just a quick show of hands. Have we got any folks here who are leaders who are not ordained, who are functioning as leaders in your congregation who are not ordained? Yep, 1, 2, excellent. 3, that's great. Lois is half ordained.
No.
On your way to being ordained, or
I'm in
retired?
Yeah, no, I'm in leadership positions, but not ordained or, yeah.
Okay, all right, that's excellent. That's excellent. As you can tell, my background is in working with lay leaders. And then who are our ordained leaders who are in the group? Okay, Chris, Lawrence, anybody else? All right, excellent. Okay, so we have, I can't tell if that's Louise showing her hand. I'll hope that she comes back. Yeah, great. So we have mostly a lay group today for this session, which is fantastic. It does not make a difference. Adaptive leadership is something that we can use regardless of our position within the system, so it's not a problem. What you'll notice is that some things are more tailored for folks who have like the power to call a meeting or chair a meeting, but just because you don't have that power, that sort of easy opportunity to do that, does not mean that you can't use adaptive leadership. So since I know that we're mostly a lay group, then we'll talk both about laity and about what clergy can do. All right. All right. So the couple of more notes I want to make before we start. So there is a participant workbook for this course. This is really important. I will not call it your Bible because we shouldn't say things like that in settings like this. But if we were not in a setting like this, that's what I would say about this handbook. This is really important. And I just wanted everybody to check that at the bottom it says participant workbook 2023 version 6. if you have a version before 6, then your page numbers are just going to be a bit off. And you may have already noticed that this is an updated version that accounts for accessibility, so that this is good for screen readers and everything. So it's changed all our page numbers on us. And so for instance, the pre-readings tonight, page numbers were slightly off. And we're going to fix the calendar so that the page numbers are perfect for you. But yes, accessibility is very important and then causes a bit of difficulties for us all. So this is really important. One of the things that I want you to notice is on the very back page of the workbook. You do not need to have a print version. I just have this to make it easy. On the very back page of your workbook, there is this little chart, the 6 core competencies of leadership. And we will just keep coming back to these 6 core competencies. They're in every single course. So I put this at the back so you could like tear it off or just print this one page, post it up somewhere in your office, carry it around with you in your wallet, whatever you like to do. This one page is particularly important. You will want to have your handbook available either in hard copy or on your computer for every one of our courses, because the group discussion questions are in that handbook. And so that's what's going to guide you through the small group discussions every single time. I'll give you the page numbers. In addition, each session, hopefully you've already discovered this, each session, there's pre-reading and questions before. And then we have the sessions, you do the questions together in your small groups. Then after the session, there are questions for reflection and your challenge activity. All of these different things have been designed to enhance your learning. And I totally understand that everybody is super exhausted and burnt out right now. And so you are entirely encouraged to figure out what level of participation works best for you. The more that you participate in these things, the more that this course will be a really good use of your time. You'll get more out of the 2 hours that we spend together every other week. You'll get more out of your small group discussions, and you'll be way better able to integrate the theory and the concepts with your actual journey of leadership. So this isn't a spectator sport. This is a participatory learning thing. And so the role of the readings and the questions before is to help prepare you to start thinking about these things as you're living up to, living through your leadership context in the days up to the next class. It's also really good for introverts, because the questions to prepare for a class are going to help you do some pre-thinking. So when we get to the class, you're already ready to like put words to things. The role of the questions after the session this is probably the most important activity. If you have time for nothing else, do the reflection questions after a session. Some of the things that we are going to touch on in this course come down to some very personal stuff. Part of what happens about leadership is that a lot of us have leadership that we don't exercise. We don't exercise it because bad things have happened in our lives and have taught us not to do certain things. There are people who scare us. Maybe it's right for them to scare us. There's all sorts of history and background and personal stuff that goes into our decisions about leading and taking risks in groups of people. This is not a therapy session, and I am not equipped to be a therapist for a small group therapy session. Probably this group is too big, and probably our time together is way too short. And so these reflection questions give you a space to enter into those questions in the privacy of your own journaling, your own reflections and prayer with God, your own time with your therapist or your spiritual director, a person that you really trust, where you can honor yourself and your leadership journey, your leadership decisions by taking the time that those questions deserve. And then we can honor this space that we have together for what it can offer. And we don't ask for it to do something that it cannot do for us. We don't have the confidentiality to touch on those things together. And that's fine. So the questions for reflection are invited to help you go much, much deeper in a space that is much more appropriate. And I strongly encourage you throughout this course to make your decision about where your boundary of privacy should lie. Everybody gets to make that decision for themselves, please do so. Please be respectful and honorable to your own needs for privacy in this, given that, I mean, we talk about having confidentiality in these spaces, but let's be honest, we can't have that much confidentiality in a space like this. So we will all covenant to do our best, but it's different than, a small group therapy thing with a therapist or an AA group or something like that. So that's the role of the questions, the reflection questions afterwards. So do that with your journal. Don't feel you need to ever tell me about it, but that's your time to be accountable to yourself and your leadership journey with God, your private leadership journey with God. You will also find challenge activities for after every session. I want to flag that these challenge activities are particularly well suited to clergy, and some of them, maybe a lot of them, lay leaders may sort of struggle to figure out how to make these appropriate. Partly this is because clergy have like a covenanted responsibility for doing this stuff with their congregations. And so this allows us to embed these experiences in clergy sort of work life. And so for the clergy, this is a great opportunity. I strongly encourage you to try out the challenge activities. For the lay leaders, I encourage you to get creative and see what ways how can you sort of honor these challenge questions for what they're intending to do? How can you get creative and figure out little ways to experiment with them, given the scope of opportunities that you have, depending on your role and your authority within your leadership context, okay? I also want to flag the fact that adaptive leadership is not a church or a religious practice. It's developed in the context of corporations and governments and gigantic NGOs. So I also encourage you to think you can try these things out in your leadership roles in spaces outside of the church as well, including, if you want to, your family, including your community association, your PTA, parent-teacher association, your, what do we call it, the board of the condo association, any of those sorts of spaces, any other committees that you're in. So do look for creative opportunities to try to explore and exercise your scope for adaptive leadership in some different ways, all right? Another alternative is, as a lay leader in a congregation, you could hand these to your clergy person and be like, we should do this. So that's also a possibility for those challenge activities. All right. We do have a little calendar that you may have already found on ChurchX to help you organize your time. We're going to change the page numbers to make it really perfect for you. And then Sarah is going to send that out in an email after today's session. So we'll just make that perfect for you. And the idea is to help you kind of balance the workload so that there's some sense of continuity over the 5 or 6 weeks of this program. So it's not just like a total of 6 hours and you're, I don't know, cramming for these sessions in the 15 minutes before each one of them, but to try to integrate them a little bit into your work life and your different life commitments in the time between the sessions. If you turn to page, wait a minute, let's just check that I got my page numbers correct. I wrote page 12 and 13. Let's test. Ooh, looks pretty good. You turn to page 12 and 13 in our workbook, you will see the agenda for today's session, and you will also see the small group activity that we're going to use today. So you'll have that for every single session. You will want these to hand, and so for a way to prepare for every single one of our sessions together is to have your workbook with you, available, open, because as I say, you're going to be using that throughout. So on page 12, we're in the introduction right now. How are we doing? Oh, we're doing very, very well. And in about 2 minutes, we're going to begin our opening brainstorm. Let's see, how are we doing? Yep, we're doing great. This is a miracle. This never happens. A couple of things before we get started. We're a small group, which is super nice, but we're a group. So do you guys all know that there's different views on Zoom? You can see the group of people in different ways. I am going to use the whiteboard as we go. And so when I'm using the whiteboard, obviously, if you put me on speaker view, then the whiteboard is as big as possible. However, I really encourage you to pay attention to each other. Even when I'm on speaker view, you should be able to adjust it so that the boxes of participants are like as big as possible. And I really encourage you to participate by watching each other, try to get a feel for people's body language, try to get engaged in like what people are thinking. I'm not the star of the show. We're going to do this together. And so I really hope that you all will have like a really good, rich interaction with each other during the course. And so by switching between gallery view, like when we're talking right now, gallery view so that you can see each other and see each other's faces, and then speaker view, but with the boxes as big as possible, then that will be more fun for you. It'll be more fun for me too. And you will notice that I pay a lot of attention to your faces. So I get to see the whiteboard up close. So I put you guys as like the main feature on my screen. And you'll notice I pay a lot of attention to your faces. One way to take notes in this course, so we cover a lot of theory in this class, and I want to emphasize this for you super, super a lot. And I will say this every single time. Memorizing the theory does not matter, okay? Memorizing the theory does not matter. Don't be rushing to take notes so that you can study for the final exam. The only thing that matters is what is helpful to you in your leadership journey. That's why you're taking this course. Each of you have decided to do this for some reason that I don't know, but I honor the fact each of you have decided to take this course because of something that you are living through. That thing that you're living through, or that thing that you're hoping for, is the most important thing in this course for you. So any piece of theory that doesn't make sense or that seems stupid to you, just ignore it. Forget about it. Give yourself permission, okay? Anything that is useful. If you get a moment where you're like, oh, wow, brainwave, that's amazing, and I just keep talking, or we keep talking, and you find us distracting, turn us off, like silence us, spend time journaling, like focus on your thing. Your learning is the only important thing here, okay? So I strongly encourage you not to take linear notes, but you will see we do a lot of kind of lateral creative thinking. One way I could suggest, we're going to go through the 6 core competencies. I like this idea of making a full page for each core competency. And as we go, this page becomes richer and richer and richer as we develop the sort of meaning and the multiplicity of each of these concepts. We'll start to see how they all connect in key ways. And so this can be a neat way that you're like, arrow off to the side, this connects to whatever, some other core competency. So that's a neat way to take some notes. And again, do not be concerned about memorizing all of the theory. You'll have, I think, permanent access to all of these recordings. You can always come back, you can always take the course again. You can read Leadership on the Line. There's lots of things. You don't need to learn it all now. All right. Okay, here we are. We're going to do an opening brainstorm. Let's just start off with what, okay, I want to check. Can you guys see if I write in green or not really? No, I always end up writing in black and blue, which is so boring, but my green is dying. Okay, so let's just start with a little opening brainstorm. Maybe you can tell me, give me a maximum of 3 words each. Any person, 3 words, what you're hoping to get out of this course. 3 words. Louise, you unmuted yourself. I saw that.
New ideas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Encouraging words at work.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun for me to learn new things with new people.
I love it. I do believe this course to be fun. So yes, hopefully it meets you on that. All right, Bev, have you strategically unmuted yourself? You'd like to
It's always because I forget to unmute myself. That's why.
Okay,
Um,
okay, great.
I too am looking for some new ideas, some ways to help our council.
Okay, yeah,
Um,
great. New ideas, ways to help your council. What's your third one?
well, take a risk. I'm
Woo!
not a big risk taker, so this is actually quite terrifying.
Okay, that is totally and utterly fantastic. I want to celebrate you for that. And hopefully you will come to the end and let's make a point of checking in with you and find out how the risk went. Okay, thanks, Beth. All right, who else? Lois.
Um, I, I'm sort of echoing what others have said with the new ideas, but for me, it's increased confidence in my ability to lead,
Mm-hmm.
and also something I struggle with is conflict. So yeah, I really,
Well, we're going to talk a lot about that.
yeah, and I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah. I'm a big fan of conflict. I'm not going to turn you all into like conflict loving hounds, but we will see, we will learn lots of very different ways to understand conflict as a
Good.
very rich source of information about a context. Yeah, great.
Good. Okay.
Thanks.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Lois. Yeah, thank you. Okay, who else? Oh, Caitlin.
So I would echo the feelings on conflict. I know that it's a thing that I'm not super comfortable with. And so one of the things that excites me about this class is the idea of looking at it differently, of it not being a way of shutting down conversations, but maybe opening them up and maybe learning together. So like the curiosity that comes from that, the idea that you can have curiosity with conflict is fascinating to me, and I'm hopeful about that.
Yes.
And I would also echo the confidence piece. I would love to learn to be confident and intentional, kind of in those moments of that.
Awesome.
And then I love to learn. So I'm just excited for the opportunity to learn a new thing together.
I'm gonna put fun. Excellent. Learning is fun. Okay. Does one more person want to share? Oh yeah, Jillian. Hi.
Hi. I was going to it's not 3 words, but after all of this listening, I also like the idea of creating space for ambiguity, and learning how to lean into that. I'm very much like the vision person, and I'm already ahead of everyone, and I need to create space for ambiguity and questions.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay. All right. I don't know that I can perfectly answer and like, be everything for all people, but I do believe that we're going to have some fun together. We're going to take some creative risks talking about some scary stuff. And what we're going to see is that we're going to use our 6 core competencies, which I'm going to tell you are like our core muscles. We're going to learn how to do that together. All right, excellent. So the thing about adaptive leadership. So the reason why I start off by asking people if they know anything about adaptive leadership and HIFITs, which I totally do not judge you for not knowing about, okay? And I'm not passive aggressive, so I don't mean that in a weird way. The reason why I start off by asking about this is that there was a time in seminaries and among clergy groups where it was like all adaptive leadership all the time. And so everybody coming through seminary learned about adaptive leadership. It was like the big new fancy thing, the big watchword. There were clergy groups doing adaptive leadership training all over the place. And so a lot of clergy have heard about adaptive leadership. And there's a widespread agreement that adaptive leadership should, in theory, be really good for the church, which I think you'll figure out by the time we're done this course why that might be. But the problem with adaptive leadership is that there's some ingredients that it requires. Like you have to already have a bunch of ingredients in your pantry before you start making the recipe. And one of the things is that I don't even think that Ron Heifetz knows what those ingredients are because he just has them in his pantry. And so I'm doing my PhD in this stuff because one of the things I think we have to do is to help people figure out what those ingredients are and where to find them, how to find them inside themselves, so that we can actually do something with these ideas. There are a lot of ingredients that could go into it, but the core ones are the ones we're going to talk about in this class. What I call the 6 core competencies of leadership. These are like our core ingredients. And with these, we can do tons of stuff. Without these, or when they're like all lax and floppy, then we're going to struggle to really do some great leadership. And if you take away nothing else from this course, please take away this: strengthening your ability in any one of these core competencies will strengthen your ability to lead your communities well, to be a positive influence in communities that you care about, and then to use any leadership technique, and particularly if you read this book, it'll help you to do any of this better. So the 6 core competencies, you have them on the sheet on the back of your workbook, are embracing ambiguity, self-differentiating, listening and discerning faithfully, searching for possibility, handling conflict with compassion, and handling power with love. You'll notice that I always put them in the same order. That's just because how I remember them, but they're not hierarchical. And what we'll see is that they really all work together. They're like our core muscles. And you can think of this course as like a gym class or a calisthenics program, because what we're going to do is we're going to strengthen our core muscles by doing some stretching and strengthening exercises. What we'll find is that just like our stomach muscles, the core competencies work together really dynamically in our leadership practice. We'll find that the definitions are fuzzy. Each one of them does something specific, but the definitions are fuzzy. Things overlap and work together. Just like how your stomach muscles, if you pull one stomach muscle, then you find out what it's been doing for you all this time. But otherwise, they all just work together perfectly seamlessly. So in today's class, we're going to begin with building this foundational understanding of what the core competencies mean and how they sort of feel. And then in the next 2 classes, we're going to be exercising these core competencies. You're going to get tired of these core competencies by the end, because we're going to be exercising these core competencies as we try out 2 strategies for leading change. So this is the core competencies session. And then in the next 2, we are using the core competencies to do other things, okay? So I'm going to begin by going through each of the core competencies. I'm going to share what they mean to me. Not because this is the authoritative definition, but I want to get our meaning making started. And then we'll move on to brainstorming, where you'll have an opportunity to share what they mean to you. And you're going to see that the meanings start kind of developing this sort of cloud of meaning, all right, around each of these concepts. So we are going to start with embracing ambiguity. So whoever said they love embracing ambiguity, we're going to start with that. And embracing ambiguity is like not just that there is ambiguity, but like, what does it mean to make a friend of ambiguity? Ugh. Friends, when was the last time that you had the pleasure of making a decision knowing that it was completely rooted on solid, unchanging facts? That's one of the things that the pandemic showed us we've been doing for a long time, except that those facts that we thought we were basing things on turned out to be assumptions. We decide to schedule the parish picnic before the end of June because that's when we assume that most families are still in town and available. And during the pandemic, we learned that we could schedule the parish picnic any day of the year that we wanted, and it wasn't going to happen anyway. The pandemic has taught us to notice the assumptions underlying our decisions, and that those assumptions are not always stable. A bunch of facts on which we had long made decisions turned out to be assumptions that could change at any moment. The thing is that as humans, and particularly as leaders, we have to make decisions anyway. We have to lead anyway. We don't have time to wait until we can test every single assumption. We have to lead anyway in the presence of these assumptions that could change at any time. Leading in an ambiguous time requires us to be constantly testing our decisions and understanding their foundations. We can stay open for in-person worship if the following conditions hold true about where we're at with COVID. Like, for instance, we all look to see, oh, the most recent variant, does it have a high mortality rate? That would change everything all over again, right? But hopefully it doesn't. And so therefore, maybe we can keep doing things in the new normal that we're trying to find. The moment that any of the conditions change, then we have to reevaluate, and we might have to revise our decisions or dramatically change direction. That's what the pandemic has taught us or reminded us of. So living in an ambiguous time is like learning to balance in a boat without falling into the water. And before the pandemic, this might have been like learning to balance on a cruise ship, you know, with the stabilizers. But during the pandemic, it was like trying to balance in a rowing scull in like a high gale. So we have to figure out how to balance on the water without falling in. It's very, very hard in the beginning, but as we strengthen our core muscles, then we can develop that fluidity, and then we can embrace the ambiguity of it all. Embracing ambiguity is like being able not only to balance out on the water, but to thrive. Do any of you guys remember the log driver's waltz? That is like the ultimate image of thriving out on the water. Now, embracing ambiguity requires us to learn how to cope not only with our own anxiety, our very natural anxiety about making decisions without solid facts, but it also requires us to cope with the anxiety of the community around us, which looks to leaders to generate stability. So embracing ambiguity works perfectly in tandem with our second core competency, which is self-differentiating. So at heart, self-differentiating means allowing other people or the community to feel things that you don't feel without feeling the pressure to match your feelings to theirs, and without forcing other people to match their feelings to yours. So self-differentiating is saying, I understand that everybody feels very anxious about all this ambiguity, but I don't feel anxious. And in fact, I maybe could feel curious about making this decision and all this ambiguity. I can be perfectly compassionate to how everybody else feels deeply anxious about all this uncertainty, but I don't need to join them in their feelings. I don't need to insist they join me in this state of relaxed calm. That is great self-differentiating. And what you're going to see is that this ability to self-differentiate, to stand calmly in the presence of all the ambiguity and a community that is super anxious about that ambiguity, that is the heart of adaptive leadership. Those two things together. Now, this brings us to our third core competency, listening and discerning faithfully. I want you to know, adaptive leadership is not about solving problems. It is not about knowing what the correct answer is and frog marching your community to some glorious conclusion. So if that's what you were hoping to get out of this course, you're totally in the wrong place and you should go and ask for a refund. All right. Adaptive leadership is building the community's capacity to respond to the challenges that they face. We've already seen one, building the community's capacity to stay calm in the midst of all the ambiguity, all right? And so adaptive leadership, because it is based in building the community's capacity, adaptive leadership is deeply rooted in the existing community. What do they struggle with? What are they anxious about? It is grounded theologically in God's call to all of us to be transformed by the power of the Holy Spirit. Like, how many times do we read, do not be afraid? And God knows that we are anxious messes as human beings, and God calls us to not be totally determined and compulsive about that. And this means, all of this means, since adaptive leadership is grounded in this call to be transformed. It's grounded in the existing community, that we can only do adaptive leadership if we are listening and discerning faithfully, really listening to what is going on in your local community. So also in this course, I'm not going to tell you exactly what change you should be leading, and I'm not going to help you figure that out, because I don't know your community like you do. You are the ones who need to listen and discern, right? You're not the only ones. Whole communities need to be doing this, but definitely, I mean, you are positioned to do listening and faithful discerning in your communities. And no expert knows your community like you do. So you're the ones who need to do the listening and discerning wisely, persistently, faithfully, to understand what kind of leadership is needed in your community. Not what new program, but what kind of transformation in the life of the community is needed. And you have to do that listening before any decisions are made about what kind of change you're called to lead. This brings us to competency number 4, searching for possibility. Searching for possibility is really the heart of what we're doing here in discerning faithfully. When we're listening to our faith community and discerning how to lead change, we are not just listening and discerning all the ways that they're broken and dysfunctional and they fall short of the gospel and they really need to be saved by a great leader like us. Because God doesn't call us to rescue broken communities. God calls us to see in them what God sees in all of us. Beautiful seeds, full of possibility, in need of gardeners. So while this is a course on adaptive leadership, a lot of what we'll do might remind you of appreciative inquiry. Is anybody familiar with appreciative inquiry? That's another one people might be familiar with. Yeah, kind of. So appreciative inquiry has this relentless search for possibility, that you really focus on what is possible here. So appreciative inquiry, for anyone who's familiar with it, the one or two of us, it's kind of gotten a bit of a bad rap, particularly in Anglican circles, being kind of a Pollyanna approach, is like, oh, everything's fine, just focus on the positive, there's nothing wrong here. But the brain science behind appreciative inquiry is actually really well documented, and it's very powerful. And it's simple, it goes like this. If we focus always on the negative, on what we are lacking, on everything that is wrong, then we're wiring our brains to be very skilled at perceiving deficiencies, flaws, failures. But if we focus with determination on searching for possibilities, we take a curious attitude to everything, then what happens is we are rewarding our brains for habits that make it easier over time to see where potential lies hidden. We're actually forming the synaptic patterns to search for possibility. We train our brain to scan the environment, not for threats, but for possibilities. So we have to practice searching for possibility, like it's our yoga pose or like it's a golf swing. We have to practice searching for possibility where those possibilities might lie. And it gets better over time. It gets easier over time. When we develop this spiritual discipline, we start to realize how much space there is for the transforming work of the Holy Spirit in the world. So, we have this question, is the glass like half full or half empty? And it's like, that's the wrong question. Where is there space in the glass that the glass could be fuller? If you're not practiced in looking for possibility, then you could try taking the curiosity cohort. Searching for possibility and practicing curiosity is not an easy skill to develop at first, because our brains are predisposed to look for threats. But as we persevere in the discipline of curiosity, as we retrain our brain, to search for possibility, it becomes this really powerful way to see the world and a powerful competency for participating in the work of the Holy Spirit. And so when we search for possibility and we listen and discern faithfully, And we're saying, what could God be doing in this real lived community here, these specific people and all of the honest messiness that is here? What are all the ways that God could be holding out possibility for things to be so much more wonderful here with this group of people in these lives, in our lives? And this brings us to the fifth competency, handling conflict with compassion. Because we're talking about real, live, living human communities. And that means that we have to talk about conflict. No matter what we do as leaders, how we handle conflict matters to the people who are influenced by our decisions, who are watching us to see behavior that they would model, who are watching us for behavior that is acceptable in the community. They're watching us to see what it means to live the gospel faithfully, watching us to see what it means that God is in this place. How we handle conflict matters to the people who are watching us, who care about what we do. And that's whether it's a conflict that has just like materialized right in front of you, you know, somebody ran into somebody else's car in the parking lot, or whether that's a building resistance to something you're trying to lead in your community. We have to hone our ability to handle conflict with compassion as leaders. We have to hone our ability to have compassion for our own selves and how we're feeling or getting triggered in the midst of conflict, which, let's be honest, that happens. We have to hone our ability to have compassion for all the parties involved, no matter how badly they're behaving and no matter who is right. And we also have to hone our ability to have compassion for those who are affected, like the collateral damage of a conflict in a community, those who are suffering the blowback of what's happening. There are a lot of leaders in the church who cannot handle conflict with compassion. Either they cannot handle conflict at all, so they avoid it just like the plague, or they can't stay in their compassion in the midst of it. It's the two things combined that makes this such a powerful competency. It's not just conflict. It's being able to stand in the midst of conflict and have compassion. And just like all of our core competencies, if you grow in your ability to do this, it has enormous, powerful impact on your ability to lead well, any kind of change. And with most of the practices in adaptive leadership, rely on your ability to handle conflict with compassion. So we're going to spend a lot of time talking about that in this course. Finally, handling our power with love. Leadership gives us power over other people. And the tools of leadership are powerful. When we have influence over other people, we can influence them in different ways, right? Leadership gives us influence, leadership gives us power, and the tools of leadership are powerful. Now, we can use our power for good, or we can use it for ill. If you're exercising leadership, then you are handling power. And so I really think that we have to figure out how we will handle that power, how we are handling our power, and be kind of a bit relentless in interrogating ourselves. How am I handling my power? Am I handling my power with love? I will teach you skills, even in this short course, that should you wish, or even were you to use them sort of compulsively, you could do enormous damage to the people and the communities under your influence. I grew up in an emotionally abusive family, and I have worked with at least one emotionally abused congregation, though I'm pretty sure I've worked with more. So I know the harm that leaders can do with tools that give them power over others. A great deal of damage is done by broken people who need transformation and who don't do their work and who don't get the help and who don't ask themselves what impact their power is having. And they hurt the people that they are influencing. So to be honest, I wrestled extensively with the question about whether to share some of these tools that we're going to talk about publicly or not. And my conclusion, and the reason why I decided to share them, is because God gives us gifts not to hide them in the ground and keep them safe, but to pursue great good for the world that God so loves, for God's children, and for the building up of the body of Christ. And so that's what we're doing in this course. That's what I'm doing with my gifts. And I strongly encourage you to pursue a way to do that with your gifts. As leaders, we are entrusted to use our power to make an incredible difference in people's lives in participation with the Holy Spirit. And so as Christians, we are called to handle our power intentionally, with delicacy, with humility, guided by our love for God and our love for the people that God has given us to as leaders. At the same time, we are called to not use certain powers, to practice the self-discipline of not using our power in certain ways because of love. So in the next session, we will learn about how expectations, rewards, and consequences shape the behavior of our communities. And then we will make a conscious choice not to use negative consequences, despite how effective that tool can be. This is because even small consequences can create strongly negative impacts in the community, and it's too easy to do damage with a moment of carelessness. And so in love, I'm going to encourage you, exhort you, my brothers and sisters, to use our self-discipline and not bring to bear the power of consequences in our leadership practice. We have enormous power as leaders, and so we must learn to handle it with love. When and how we use our power, for what good intentional purposes, and to use our self-discipline, our core muscles, so that we don't use our power for ill. Embracing ambiguity, self-differentiating, listening and discerning faithfully, searching for possibility, handling conflict with compassion, and handling power with love, you already have these competencies. We could spend all day listening to one another tell stories of leadership, parenting, ministry, committee work, and we could see all of these competencies at work in your stories. You already have all these core muscles. But just because I have core muscles does not mean that I can go to the gym and work out with like a top-notch yoga trainer, right? I have them. That doesn't mean that I'm very good with them. So what we're going to work on in this course is developing your capacity, your ability to find these things in yourself and then to use them intentionally and with precision. Because after all, even Olympic athletes are always working with a coach to strengthen their skills. And so no matter how advanced you are in any one of these core competencies, there are always ways for you to improve. And what you'll find is that some of these core competencies come really naturally to you. And some of them, you can't imagine how somebody else is so good at them. And that's okay. That's why we're doing this exercise together. So we're going to get started now by raising our awareness and building our core competencies, our muscles, by building out our word cloud for each of these core competencies. So I've told you what they feel like to me, and now I would like to hear, what do they feel like to you? We are going to start with, wait a minute, we're going to start with embracing ambiguity. What does embracing ambiguity mean to you? What does embracing ambiguity mean to you? Okay, who's that? Caitlin?
Sitting with discomfort.
Whoa, sitting with discomfort. Awesome. Yeah, what else?
Releasing control.
Oh, good one, Rowena. Releasing control. Yeah, who else? Lois.
Acknowledging frustration.
I hope everybody else is doing some good breathing right now. I'm like, whoa, those are stressful. Acknowledging. What was it?
Frustration.
Frustrated. Yeah. You'll find that as we get into this conversation, my spelling gets worse and worse. We just have to accept that about me. Okay, what else? What else does it mean? Louise.
Saying I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. There's such a humility to that, isn't there? To say that. I don't know. What else does it mean?
Maybe trusting, trusting the process, but not knowing the destination.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Adaptive leadership is very, very much about process over outcomes, process over content, process over destination. Great. Anybody else? All right. We got 5 more to go. All right. I'm going to step out of the way so it's covered in our camera. And then you can come back, and if you want to have more of these things than you were able to write down, then you can come back, watch the video again, come back to this point. Okay, so we've had embracing ambiguity. Let's have self-differentiating. What does this mean?
Stepping back from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, stepping back.
Asking questions like, what if it's not about me?
Yeah, I love that. Okay, asking questions. What if it's not about me? Yes. And how easy is it, like when we're experiencing a conflict, particularly, to be like, oh, this is all about me. What a disaster. Not about me. And sometimes it is about us, but we have to have the self-differentiation to figure that out. Lawrence, what do you think?
Being matured in handling difficulties.
Yeah, being mature in encountering difficulties. Yeah,
Handling
excellent.
difficulties.
Thank you. Yeah. So it's like staying grounded when we face those obstacles. Excellent. Bev, I can see that you're unmuted.
Well, when I was reading through this, I thought my interpretation was not to be afraid to be different.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Nice. Yeah, and that we can be in different places, and that's okay. We can still be in a relationship. We don't all need to be glommed together in the same exact place. And really, that moment of sort of saying, you're there and I'm here and we're okay, is sort of the starting point of leadership, particularly for lay leaders. So this self-differentiating piece, because you don't have a status of formal authority. And so it's being able to do this and then seeing if other people will follow you to a place that you're going to lead. That's the starting place for lay leaders. Okay, who else? Anyone want to put one more thing on the board here?
Is it understanding oneself or being true to oneself?
Mm-hmm, very good. Yep, and you'll notice that there is no authoritative definition. So you said it, so the answer is yes. So 2 things, understanding oneself and being true to oneself. Yeah, this is like the inward discernment. Excellent. Okay, there we go. That's our self-differentiating. What you'll find is as we go through the course, you'll keep building a richer and richer understanding of what these things mean. And you'll notice that as we go, we might have certain terms that show up on multiple words, which is totally fine. Totally fine. Okay, let's do listening and discerning faithfully. What does this mean? Okay, I can see Bev and Louise. You're still unmuted. Oh, somebody just started speaking. Louise. Uh-oh. There we go. Okay. Bev, you are still unmuted. Do you want to say anything about this?
Nope.
No, you're just leaving yourself on mute. All right, go ahead, Caitlin. You guys can just jump in. That's cool.
So you mentioned that things can connect. So for me, this one was self-awareness and reflection.
Yeah.
So the self-differentiation seemed really important as part of listening and discerning. So listening and discerning kind of what they're sharing and not what you're hearing necessarily, and being able to kind of separate those a little bit.
Totally, because or else this just turns into like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Hey, I listened and discerned, and this congregation needs exactly what I want to give them. Yep. Yeah, that's perfect. That is exactly the way. So these, right, our core muscles connect, and so there we've got a bridge over. Self-differentiating creates the conditions for this. Great. Okay, what else does listening and discerning faithfully contribute? Go ahead, Lois.
Being patient to give others time. I guess being patient and while you're listening.
Yeah.
And that may mean sitting in silence.
Yeah. Big one, right? And I'm reminded of somebody who said about embracing ambiguity. I don't know, right? We need to listen for things that we don't know yet. And it might be that people don't have words for these things yet. And we're just gonna, yeah, be patient and sit in some silence for a while. Yeah, go ahead, Lawrence.
What about seeking advice or counseling in decision making?
Seeking advice, yeah. And here's another place where the humility is such a big piece of this, right? There's things that I don't know, and I need other people to bring me to a fuller place of understanding. And so, yeah, seeking advice and figuring out who to go and ask for, that's a piece of discernment right there. Great. What else?
Thinking, like digging into what people say, like not just the surface, but really digging into it.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. I'm going to put curiosity here because I think this is like a real discipline of, I hear your words. What is behind those words? What is underneath it? Awesome. Okay, somebody going to put one more idea on the board.
What about seeking feedback? So like asking if, like repeating back what they shared with you, or what you heard them share with you, and checking to see if you heard them or if they felt heard.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, excellent. And again, as we continue throughout the course, you're going to find that these words come to have like richer and richer meanings. So excellent. All right. Well done, you guys. So we've done 3. Let's do searching for possibility. Again, you'll notice I always do them in the same order. That's just because how I've memorized them, but not because there is a correct order in any way, shape, or form. Okay, searching for possibility. What does this mean in our leadership practice? What does it feel like? Whoa. Searching for possibility.
Seeing and noticing everyone's different gifts.
Yeah. Seeing and noticing differences. Differences, but like differences is like sources of richness, sources of richness and beauty and possibility and creativity. Awesome. Differences is like such a great thing. I love that. Yeah. Awesome. What else? Searching for possibility. What else does possibility feel like?
I was thinking of asking wondering questions, like I wonder questions.
Yeah, I wonder. One of the things in Curiosity Cohort is that they really encourage these like curious questions, these wondering questions. And having had so much experience with very broken and dysfunctional congregations, this can be such a game changer for people to have permission to actually feel curiosity about the unknown. And for that to be an okay thing, we don't need to prioritize them and make strategy out of it. We could just be curious. And that can be such a beautiful thing. Yeah. What else? We're looking for, let's say, 3 more. Chris, can you help us out here?
I guess looking for what people are passionate about, follow their bliss, what they have energy for. I guess
Yeah.
the potential there.
Yeah. So this is a great one when you find that people are really energized by something. Like there's this sort of nexus of energy among people about something. That is such, for me, that's the heart of discernment. That's a heart of possibility. Yeah, fantastic. Lawrence, did I see you
Yeah.
unmute? There we go.
Yeah. Looking for new ways to do things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, new ways to do things. And again, this can be very threatening, but it can also be very inspiring and permission giving. Awesome. All right. Can we put 2 more on the board? Go ahead, Louise.
The thought of, failure's okay. If we fail once, we try again. And
yes.
Because don't try, there's nothing possible if you don't try at all.
Yeah, this is huge. Did somebody say that they were looking for creative risk taking? This is huge. Yep. Huge. Awesome. Okay, one more. What possibilities are there that we haven't explored yet?
Just playing with things. Just play with an idea.
Play. I love it. All right. Excellent. Okay, there's our searching for possibility. Okay. Handling conflict with compassion. The 2 of them linked together. What does that mean for you guys? What does it feel like?
A willingness to look beyond yourself.
Yeah. Yep. What else does it look like?
I think not denying conflict, right? Like it's allowing that conflict is going to happen. So, but there is a way possible with conflict.
Yep. We can accept conflict, and sort of like the way that we would accept, you know, like that kid in the class who's being really difficult. Like we can just accept conflict, and we can have different orientations around it. It doesn't always need to mean the same thing or feel like the same thing or happen in the same way. Great. So we can like differentiate conflict. Okay, what else does it mean, Lois?
Forgiving ourselves when we do encounter conflict and either handle it well or don't handle it well.
Yep. That is so important. So part of what you may find, not you, Lois, you collectively may find in this class is that if you have memories of we're going through this class, we're talking about stuff, and you're like, man, now I'm remembering that time when I don't want to remember that I did that thing and I did it really badly. And handling conflict with compassion includes having compassion for yourself and how you handle that conflict. And certainly for yourself, if you're having those memories, then you can transform those memories with some compassion for yourself. So, and learning to do that for yourself creates your ability to do that for other people. And that creates the possibility of change. So yeah, forgiving ourselves. And I'm going to put, this also helps us with some perseverance. That conflict doesn't need to be the end of something. It can be part of the journey of something. Chris, you are having the most speaking face. Do you want to help us out here? What does handling conflict with compassion mean for you?
I guess just seeing the potential in conflict. I guess I see conflict as having an inherent potential to transform, and it's an opportunity to lead. I guess it's just a door that's opened up for you to lead, to be a leader. Yeah.
Awesome.
Not that I enjoy conflict, but it's and I've had some of it, and it's some of it's been destructive, but it's an opportunity to build or rebuild.
Yeah. What a great way to think about it. We can have a lot more compassion for people if we can see that conflict can actually be really a transformative opportunity for everybody involved. And that conflict is an open door to whole new pathways for the life of a community if we can find them. And having compassion for ourselves and for other people is the way to help us be creative, search for possibility in the midst of that conflict. So this is really great. This is really great. All right. One more. Caitlin, go for it.
Learning to hold boundaries and accountability with compassion.
So true. So true. Boundaries and accountability. So we're going to talk about boundaries in the next session, particularly when we're talking about conflict. We're sometimes talking about people behaving extremely badly in totally unacceptable ways. And handling conflict with compassion includes compassion for ourselves and our, what do we call them? The collateral damage when we have a person behaving very inappropriately. So boundaries, and what was the other one?
Accountability.
And accountability, yep.
So compassion doesn't mean, that there isn't accountability.
Totally true. And also compassion does not mean that we just give up on our self-differentiation and just allow people to behave however they want just because. So we're gonna work on this understanding that we can stand up also in the midst of conflict. So we're gonna talk a lot about that in session number 2. All right, excellent. This was very rich, you guys. This was super rich. And okay, so we've got our last one. Handling power with love. What does handling power with love look like? Let's go for five speakers on the board. I'm going to count you guys off. All right, handling power with love. What does this mean?
It means building people up in their ideas.
Yeah, building people up. Yeah, excellent. What else does it mean?
Modeling that we are all learning together.
Nice. Yeah, we all together are learning. Nice. Forget the spelling. Okay, 3 more. What else does it mean? What do you think, Jillian?
Building people like and modeling. Before I had written down empower and equipping. So I think those are kind of covered.
Yeah, empowering, and equipping. Nice. We're not looking for right answers here, people. There's more than enough answers to go around. So one time I did a session with previous graduates of this program, and we spent an entire 2 hours going through the 6 core competencies and just brainstorming how the meanings had changed since they took the course. So there's always more. This is the 10th cohort that I've done, and there's very little overlap between the different groups, what people say. So there's tons of different things that this could mean. What do you think, Chris?
I guess just knowing that your words have power, being sort of reserved in what you say. I guess your time has power. Your words have power. That your very presence has power.
Knowing that you have power, even, and that's our words, our presence, but we all have power, and particularly as leaders, we have to acknowledge that we have power. And hopefully throughout this course, if you're not convinced at the moment that you have power, hopefully throughout the course, you will find ways that you do have power, you do have influence. And as you find that, hopefully you'll be using it with love.
Yeah.
Do you want to add something to that?
No, I guess just resilience. I just finished a course on the EQ, and they talk a lot about resilience and yeah, the power of the resurrection to stand up again, or resilience, like just I guess just offering that truth is love, or loving. Yeah, it's
Great. Great. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, one more. Okay, Caitlin.
Sorry, I thought is it okay if I go again?
Totally it is. Bring us home.
So I would add accountability and boundaries here. I like to say that boundaries are a way of expressing love, because they're a way of making sure your needs and the other people's needs are both trying to be met. It's a way of, so I call boundaries love. Nice.
And so that's another place where we see this overlap between some of these different, right? That handling our power with love includes handling conflict with compassion. And this includes love for ourselves, compassion for ourselves. So yeah, so that's another place where we have an overlap. So this is great. All right, you guys, well done. Well done. All right. So this is a foretaste of what our 6 core competencies mean. I don't have authoritative answers. You guys haven't come up with every single possible thing. There's zillions more that we could have said. That's searching for possibility in the richness of these words. What we're going to do now is that we're going to break into some small groups. So Sarah is going to do, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So groups of 3, please, Sarah. And the core task, so that you'll find this on page 13. So what we're going to do in the breakout groups now, so I've told you what the 6 core competencies mean to me. You've started your meaning making journey, what they mean to you. And now what you're going to do is to identify the core competencies at work in one another's stories. So our core task is to tell stories and to hear the core competencies in each other's stories, to affirm one another's experience. And also what's important is that within this group, we are all leaders. So it's important that you see and notice each other, value each other as leaders, to see the possibility that is here, even in what can be a super, super difficult moment in the life of the church. Burnout rates are really high. Obviously, everyone is struggling. Our denominations are all dying. So it's a very, very tense time. It's a very, very tense time. And it's important that even within this group, we are practicing searching for possibility by seeing and noticing, listening to one another. All right. So what I want you to do is for each person in your group to tell a story of a time when you felt really proud of your leadership. This is really hard for some people, but try to be proud of yourself while being witnessed by other people. Okay. This is going to exercise your muscles of being positive. And then as each person is telling their story, the other people in the group are listening for the core competencies that you can hear in that person's story. Like, wow, Sarah, I so hear, you were listening and discerning so faithfully to that community when you were doing what you were doing. All right. And so one person shares, the other 2 people feedback. Next person shares, the other 2 people feedback. All right. So encourage each other using the core competencies and continue to sort of build out the richness of understanding what these core competencies mean. Please focus on the positive. So please do not get into problem solving or critiquing each other's experience. Please don't give each other advice. All you want to do is to notice and appreciate the core competencies with each other. This is a leadership course, so kindly exercise your leadership within your small group to monitor the time so that everyone has equal sharing time. And if your group happens to be done early, you can kind of take a little break, come back to the main group. Does anybody have any questions about that? Well, excellent, that's good. So we are going to take 20 minutes, please, Sarah. And so you guys have those questions on page 13 of your workbook. So you're going to have 20 minutes and we'll see you back here then. "45 seconds. All right. 30 more seconds. Okay. It's like a countdown to New Year's. 5, 4, 3. All right. And here they are. Okay, welcome back, everybody. So, how were your groups? What was it like to be proud of yourself in front of other people? And what did you learn about the competencies? Sharing them with each other and receiving them from your group members.
I found that I I didn't talk for very long. You know, I told a very short version of my story in retrospect, and that I feel like I answered the questions. You know, I was almost proving or, you know, arguing why I had done those things or how I had done those things as I was telling the story instead of just telling the story. So that was really interesting for me as I was doing it to see that.
Yeah. Did you learn anything from the feedback that you received? You're like, hey, I didn't notice that about it.
I found a lot of affirmation in what both folks shared, and you know, appreciated the piece of courage that was noticed, and some of that. So that was really great.
Good. I'm glad. What was it like for other folks to be proud of yourself in front of other people and to be affirmed, to be affirming?
I appreciated the response from both of my partners very much. It's always a little awkward the first time you're in a group that you don't know people, and to share things that are very personal and very much in our hearts. So I appreciated the safe comfort that I received.
Great. Well done, group members of Lois.
I really liked hearing or getting to tell my partner, I was in a group of two, of things that I heard that I don't think were intentional to follow along, like to make sure we were covering off on the things. So it was just really good to hear the story, how it unfolded, and how it just sort of naturally kind of met these different areas of the core competencies sort of thing.
Yeah. It's so neat to just like notice them kind of in the wild, people doing them.
I think as leaders, and you've probably said this already tonight, but we do things and we're so involved in leading, sometimes we don't realize how we're doing it or what we're doing truly till we talk about it and somebody else can say, oh yeah, that's what that was, or that's what that was. So we need, it's always good to have somebody off to the side and say, what did you really see in that, you know, activity that I led? And maybe we should do that more often as we lead. Have somebody say, okay, what did you see me do that was good? Or what did you see me do that was, you know, kind of whacked out, you know?
Yeah. One of the things that one of the things that I think is really powerful about this is so many of us are taught to lead quietly, and we don't praise each other for our leadership in like really organic ways because we often don't see and notice each other's leadership. And so one of the things that I've heard a lot from this first exercise is how hard it is for people to be proud of themselves, tell a positive story, and then to await the feedback of other people. Some people are almost unable to do it because that sounds arrogant to them. It feels arrogant. They can't do it. And so, yeah, just telling a story and asking for each other's feedback, how powerful is that? Great.
And also, sometimes our leadership comes like naturally because that's all that you have been called to do, or you have been assigned to do at that moment. So you are not able to put into ways. But You have to scratch down into your head to find out, oh, that's a story to tell.
Yeah. Yeah. Were you able to find a good story, Lawrence?
I was struggling, so I just picked one that happened last Sunday.
Good. Good. And I hope that your group members showed you that even just randomly last Sunday, you were doing some of the 6 core competencies.
Yes.
Yeah, great. That's just great. All right. So one of the things that we're going to do at the end of each one of our sessions is we're talking about the 6 core competencies. We're going to talk about how to use the 6 core competencies. You've told stories that include examples of the 6 core competencies. But this space that we're in together right now on Zoom is really similar to spaces that many of us find ourselves in and leading in these days. And so here on Zoom in our course, the 6 core competencies are actually at play here too. We could tell a story, Lawrence, just randomly of something that happened here, and we'd be able to find the 6 core competencies inside of it. So one of the things that we're going to do at the end of each one of our classes is we're going to review what happened during our time together and try to find examples of the 6 core competencies, not in what we talked about, but how we were together as a group. Okay, so this is our scavenger hunt. We're on a scavenger hunt for the 6 core competencies in our our process of being together. So the way it's going to work is this. Tonight, I am going to tell you how I think the 6 core competencies were at work. Okay. Next time, we're going to work together. I'll help you out. And we're going to find examples of all 6 core competencies. Again, not in what we talked about, but in our being together. Okay. Our practice of being together. And then in the last session, the scavenger hunt is your final exam. You guys can all work together. It's a group exam. And I haven't had a group yet that hasn't gotten 10 stars. So, so you're going to work together to try to see if you can find the 6 core competencies together. By then, I promise you, you'll be able to do it. As I say, I will not let you fail on that. And you'll do it together. So what 6 core competencies, how did we find the 6 core competencies in our time together? All right, so you ready? So finding possibility. You guys spent your entire small group searching for possibility in one another's stories. You didn't know what might be there, but you were listening with ears attentive to what was good, attentive to what was leaderly in one another's stories. So you have been searching for possibility in one another for the past 20 minutes. You've been searching for possibility in one another's stories. By showing up at this course, you are searching for some sort of possibility about leadership in the new knowledge. All right. Handling power with love. All right. This is such an easy one because Louise didn't say, oh no, Lois, didn't you say you had a really beautiful experience in your group? And I said, well done, members of Lois's group. Because when we have the power of giving feedback to each other, that is a power that we have. You could have advised one another, criticized each other, driven one another to tears, traumatized each other. You had that power when each of us makes our story vulnerable to one another, and then we know we're going to receive feedback. That's a vulnerable place to be. And the people giving feedback have power. And by focusing on the 6 core competencies, you all used your power with love for one another in the feedback that you gave. Self-differentiating. Did anybody find yourself praising, praising Let's just pretend that says what it's supposed to say. Did anybody find yourselves praising somebody else for competency that you don't think that you have? Being proud of other people, even when you feel nervous about it yourself, that's great self-differentiating. That's saying, I'm okay, I don't have it, but you have it, and that is so beautiful to me. That is so awesome. And I can celebrate you even if I feel a little bit sheepish about it for myself. So anybody who did that was practicing great self-differentiating. Also, you may have found yourself disagreeing when we were brainstorming with the 6 core competencies, what they meant. You may have found yourself disagreeing with what other people were saying, or even disagreeing with what I said was the definition of those things. And yet, if in that moment you were like, we can allow these things to coexist and I can have my thoughts and this person can have their thoughts, then that is great self-differentiating that you were practicing during the session. Embracing ambiguity. So, balancing in the boat on the water, several people noted that even coming to this course feels like this to them. And anytime that we're like, oh, I'm going to go into a space where my knowledge, I admit that my knowledge is not sufficient. There's things I don't know, and I'm going to allow somebody else to know things that I don't know. And I'm going to allow a group of people that we are all going to go on a learning journey. Then you're embracing the ambiguity of the learning journey itself. If we can't embrace that ambiguity, we can't learn. That's a core principle. And so just by showing up here and being willing to learn, you're embracing that ambiguity, the tension between what you do know and then what you don't yet know and you would like to learn more of. So you've been embracing ambiguity. And the final one, handling conflict with compassion. When you start a small group together and you have to decide who is going to go first, or you find that one person is taking a little too long and you have to figure out how to have the awkward conversation about making sure that everybody has enough time to talk. These are little small instances in a small group of how conflict can be not gigantic, not 2 rams butting heads, but can just be small moments of tension, interpersonal tension, that you have to figure out how to do that, how to deal with that. And has anybody encountered somebody who gets really rigid about that and like even upset about like, can you stop talking now? Like you've had more than enough time. You stop talking, it's somebody else's time. And so if in your group you navigated any of that tension, who might go first, how much time have we got, any of those things, if you navigated them with compassion for each other, you were doing this core competency. Also, anytime that you facilitate a group, chair a meeting, deal with agenda issues, all of those things are little expressions of conflict where we get to practice this competency of being humane and compassionate with one another and how we deal with them. So as you can see, there are lots of really small moments during an interaction like we've had together this evening, in which the core competencies are totally at work. And especially handling conflict with compassion or handling power with love, we get to see them really clearly when we have like a big breakdown, right? When somebody launches into fixing mode after somebody's shared. And the absence of those things is people using good core muscles to refrain from the temptation of just sorting out other people's problems and telling everybody what to do. And so this is my way of saying to you, we get to see these big examples of the core competencies, but as we go, we're going to enhance our sensitivity to be able to see really small examples of them. And being able to see small examples and then use our muscles in like very fine, delicate ways is part of our work of growing in our capacity to use any of these core competencies with a bit more intentionality and precision. That's what we're going to do next time. Now that we've really talked about them, now we're going to start trying to use them. Next time, we're going to talk about the organizational culture of our faith communities, and we're going to really start talking about conflict and people behaving in inappropriate ways. So boundaries, accountability, these will be some of our watchwords. The readings for next time are on page 15 to 18. But most importantly, reflection questions for today's session are on page 14. And just a reminder that those questions are important because they give you an opportunity to go deeper into some of the underlying questions and to spend some private time thinking about some of the stuff that might have come up for you today. Our course happens every other week. So we will see you in 2 weeks' time, November the 16th, friends. It's great to be going on this journey with you. I'm happy to stay around and answer any questions that you have, but assuming that many of you will want to go, possibly go to bed, it's been a pleasure meeting you, and I look forward to going on this journey with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
There we go.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Sarah. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.